Guys, welcome to the very first, the inaugural member stories. This is a new idea that we've had over the last couple of weeks, where we want to really open the door on some of our members and their stories. Many of us know each other particularly well at training, but we don't necessarily know some of the interesting stuff that goes on in people's lives outside of that. And we've all got some interesting stories. And when this idea was sort of brought to me as a sort of concept that might be quite fun, both for us as other trainers and other members to listen to, but also hopefully for anyone coming into training to get an idea of the sort of people that we are. We're perfectly normal, by the way. I thought it would be nice to chat to a few sort of what we call founding members that have been around for a while, and really try and dig into some interesting stories. And there's one person that came to mind very quickly. In fact, there were a number of people that came to mind very quickly. But today I've got a chap called Mike Borkett, who joined us in about 2014, 2013. So it must be nearly 10 years since he first started training with us. Mike is one of those people, and let's be very clear about this. Everyone who comes to training, in fact, anyone who goes into any group of people has an effect on that group of people in one way or another. And I think we often underestimate the effect that we can have as an individual on others. That being said, I think I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think Mike knows that he has a very positive effect on the group around him, and he has a hugely positive effect on me. Every time I see him coming to training, my face lights up. All this being said, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, 2022, Mike suffered one of the worst ski accidents I've ever heard about. And I won't go into any more detail than that. I'll let Mike talk us through what happened and how he's come through that and how he is now. But without further ado, welcome, Mike.
Hello, thanks for having me, Tom. And hi for everybody listening. It's pretty cool that we're doing this. And yeah, happy to share my story and yeah, hopefully you find it interesting or inspirational, or turn it off whenever you want. Like it's an interesting story, and I've learned a lot from it. So it's nice for me to be able to share.
I think that's so true, and I think we do learn from really tough experiences. There's no question they put us into hard spaces. But so Mike, walk us through that morning as you're on the mountain, because we were skiing a one-element trip at the same time in, I think, Teen, and we got a text from your wife Sophia saying that you were in a terrible way. But let me talk us through the morning and how things happened on that day.
So it was much like yourself, ski every year, have done for the last 30 odd years or so, and skiing for me and being in the mountains is just my thing. It's my passion. And it was Thursday morning, so sort of day 4, day 5, 10th of March 2022, and it's a beautiful morning. First lift up, pretty hard packed conditions, beautiful sunlight, and about 5 or 6 of us on the mountain, no one else around. And we thought, right, we'll go for it here. We're going to do some carving. We were halfway between a small resort called Les Collons on the way over to Verbier in Switzerland. And about halfway down this black run called Les Collons 2, there's a lip. So it's just very steep at the start, a few moguls, get through that. There's a lip, and then it's very steep then on the second half. And at the bottom of that mountain, you're supposed to go left, big arrows saying turn left. And you go onto a little track and traverse along. As I said, we were going for it. And just before that lip, caught an edge, lost my balance, and then ended up tumbling at very high speed the second half of that piece, essentially. And where the big arrows were to point left, underneath that, they built up a 4 or 5 foot wall of ice to support those structures. I hurtled into that very high speed with what ended up being my hip, thankfully. And I sort of tumbled over and came to a stop on the other side. And yeah, at the time, I didn't really know what happened. I tried to get myself back up. I was very winded, didn't get my breath.
You weren't unconscious at that point?
Wasn't unconscious, was wearing a helmet the whole time. And I mean, that saved my life without any question. And of course, when you're hurtling down that second part of the mountain, you're picking up speed. As I say, we were going fast to start with. And yeah, I kind of then realized all of a sudden, okay, my leg's a bit numb here. I can't breathe. And I settled into position in pretty deep snow the other side of this ridge. And luckily, I had a couple of skiers with me, but there was a group of Dutch nurses that were on the lift on the way up, saw the whole thing happen, called the air ambulance team. And I think I was dug out and I was on the helicopter within about 7 or 8 minutes of that incident, in the blood wagon and into the helicopter. And the sort of long short of it is that ended up being 30 broken bones. My left lung collapsed there on the mountain, and then subsequently about 9 weeks later collapsed again once I eventually got back into the UK. And I'm still currently in recovery. So speaking to you now, sort of 18 months on from that crash. Thankful to be alive. Thankful to be having a conversation with you and anybody listening. We've just had a little boy, and yeah, family is still going. So it was a huge life-changing moment. I'm still on crutches. I've got one more surgery to go on my hip. It was in 5 bits, and now it's not, but it's currently in a 40-degree angle to the right-hand side where it's not supposed to be. So I need to re-break that and fix it, and I'll be all right. But there's been moments where we felt like that wasn't going to be the case. I'd certainly had 2 or 3 moments where I thought life is over, like I'm done, particularly on the mountain. And yeah, I was in hospital for the best part of 3 months, and then bedbound for the best part of 6.
So, Mike, I mean, I think you've given a brilliant, what I would describe actually as a pithy overview of what happened there. I mean, I think if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just digging into some of the stuff you've said.
Go ahead.
I appreciate it must be quite tough to relive it, because it would have been an extraordinary period of time for you and for Sophia and for all your loved ones and so forth. But when we got, this happened in Switzerland, and then you were, which in some ways I may be wrong, but it's quite lucky because the Swiss medics are,
oh my God,
very
and it's a fascinating model actually when you compare it to our brilliant NHS here. But you know, that Swiss hospital was full of young local doctors and nurses. You know, that they got well paid. That was a real career for them. Nobody was stressed. It wasn't like the environment that you see going into A&E in 2023 in the UK. It was. I'm so fortunate that it was Switzerland. You're right.
So you get into the helicopter brings you down at the hospital. You get taken in, and what, straight into surgery? Is the spinal stuff going on? Is the lungs to be reinflated?
So they kind of try not to move me, but yeah, they cut all my clothes off, and basically wheeled me straight into surgery. Like pump me full of morphine, where possible, do as many checks as they can to make sure I'm not allergic to anything, and straight into what was, I think, 6.5 hours of surgery. So the surgery they did was try to reinflate the lung. They fitted 3 plates to the left-hand side of my rib cage. So I broke all my ribs on the left-hand side, broke my collarbone, shoulder blade, back, and then my hip, and then there was a crack on my pelvis. And then there's these bones that go onto your spine. They're called the transverse ribs. So I broke about 7 or 8 of them, going onto my back as well. So yeah, they tried to fix as much as possible.
Amazing. And presumably the lung had collapsed because one of the ribs had perforated it?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
So yeah, they did an amazing job, right? They reinflated the lung, they fixed the ribs, and then they put what they called a gamma nail, which is for, I guess, use of a better phrase, it's a metal rod with a sort of L shape to it. They put that down my right leg to try and fix the hip together. But of course, we subsequently found out about 9 months later that hadn't worked, and we'll come on to that later, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you're now in hospital in Switzerland. How long does that last for?
So I was there coming on a month, sort of 3.5 weeks to a month. Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, I mean, I'm going to ask some really stupid questions, but at this point, you can't sit up, you can't get out of bed, you can't use the loo.
No.
There's everything. You're just completely immobile.
Can't move. I could move my right arm and my left leg. That was about it. I remember there was a handle above the bed that I would pull myself up, but of course, every time I pulled myself up, it would be screaming agony. Oh yeah, and I think I was on a drip of fentanyl and morphine mix, which just, I mean, and there's like a little button that you can press to top yourself up, and that mixture just made me not very well. But you know, I had to have something to try and get through the pain, and then there was an epidural to try and get the bottom of the body numb, essentially.
Yeah. So what do you, I mean, obviously you're trying to deal with this pain, but is there anything to consume the mind for these 3-4 weeks?
Funnily enough, the Swiss downhill competition was on Eurosport. So I was trying to take some notes there, trying to understand where I went wrong. And I mean, you know, there's a few channels. There's a physio, which was my first, you know, experience of a physio of that type. And, you know, we're talking about wiggling your toes and rolling onto one side. That's the kind of physio that I was doing for the best part of a month. I remember the day that I was able to sit in a chair for the first time, or just sort of sit on the side of the bed. It was enormous. And I was sending yourself updates and sending the guys at One Element updates about what was going on. And I remember, I think what got me through those opening couple of weeks was the idea of sort of mini victories. And, you know, can I move my kneecap today? Or can I try and get my leg off the bed today? And I'd do that, and then I would be done. I would sleep then for the rest of the day. That would be my mission. But I couldn't allow myself to think any further than that, because that in itself was so hard to do, that I had to put all my focus on that. And I didn't have the mental capacity to do anything else.
That is amazing. So your complete focus is on the one rehabilitative task of that day, and that might be bringing your hand together into a fist, or
100%.
Trying to take a full breath, or whatever it was, or moving a kneecap, as you say.
Yeah, they give you these breathing toys. They are, they've got a little ball inside of them, and you breathe in, and then sort of fast out, and the ball goes up to a certain level. It's got little monitors on, and you would try and beat your score from the day before. You know, it's that kind of.
Yeah. I wish I could have been there. I'd have loved competing against you.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have done. But it's funny, I was thinking about, you know, I did One Element 3-4 times a week on the lead up to the trip. I was doing it, it's a big part of my life before all of this happened. And I remember talking to my dad, and he said, I don't think that I would have been able to make the recovery that I have, albeit we're 18 months, I'm still not there, but I don't think my body would have reacted the way it had I not had the benefit of those sessions before. It's almost like your body is trained to go through difficult times, or push yourself to the edge, or try new things. And I mean, that's one of the things I love about One Element, is you have that community of keep going, and everybody's cheering you on. And I had that virtually through WhatsApp groups and stuff, but I also had that in my mind from the memories I had before to try and get through. So
yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, I don't want to sort of set these up as sort of
No, nor do I. And I mean that. I'm not just saying that because we're doing it.
I do think you've got a point though. When you're talking about physical fitness, there's also an element of psychological fitness where you start to build that resilience network or neural network in the brain. So, you know, if we're doing the circle of doom, as people sometimes refer to it as, and you're trying to hit the same split on every rep for 8 reps, that takes a hell of a lot of psychological resilience and obviously fitness and physical resilience. So there is no question that I think this sort of thing, well, hopefully would have helped. But I'm really interested as well, Mike. So we've sort of dipped a bit into that first period. And then you went away, and so by this point, you're back in the UK, you're kind of probably given hope that actually things are on the up, and we're looking at perhaps 6 months, 12 months, and you may be able to, I don't know, what are the doctors saying to you at this stage, sort of 3 months in?
To be honest, you get a lot of different opinions. The getting out of Switzerland was its own challenge in itself. And the doctors there kind of their mission was to just medically pass you to be able to get on a flight. And I wasn't passed to go on a commercial flight. I had to be flat at that point. I still couldn't move really. So we got a tiny little air ambulance, basically a small plane back to the UK. That's another tip for everybody listening to this: get insurance, very important. And I didn't get expensive insurance. It was like Money Supermarket, whatever. Just get it. And you get back, and then you're met with a whole new group of people, right, with a different objective. And I was transferred to London Bridge Hospital, was there for about a month, and the objectives there moved. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not trying to think too far ahead. It's step by step then. So by that time I was able to get on my crutches and maybe sort of move, I don't know, 4 or 5 meters. And that would be huge. I remember being so elated by that. And that's the goal for next week is to double that. And that's where your mind is. So at that time, the doctors aren't really giving you a recovery time. The first time somebody said to me that there would be a timeline on it, because I was asking the same questions as you were, how long is this going to be? I think I must have texted you at some point. I was looking back at old messages. I was like, 3 months or something, talking gobbledygook. And one of the physios said it could be 3 years. And I remember that really took me down. I was like, wow, this is going to be long. And then, they're not far off. It's probably going to be 2.5 years or so. But as I say, you kind of you try not to think too far ahead. And I think particularly when my lung collapsed for the second time, so I got out of London Bridge. Sounds like I was in jail. It's a very nice hospital. I got out of London Bridge after 2.5 months worth of hospital treatment. Back home, completely had to redo the house, so couldn't go up any stairs or anything like that. So we moved everything around in the living room and got a hospital bed in the living room, and we had to make changes to the toilet and the bath and all this kind of stuff so I could try and stay sort of relatively sanitized and not stink the place out. And then lung collapse for the second time, just out of nowhere really. We were blue lighted into Chelsea, Westminster, scanned, looked at in resus, and ended up being at the major trauma ward at St Mary's Hospital for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
And so how long after the original accident are we talking now?
So that was across the Easter weekend. So 9 weeks?
Okay.
8-9 weeks, I think. I don't know.
So 2.5 months,
Yeah. And that takes you back, because all of a sudden you've got I had 2 tubes coming out my lungs, and I was wasn't really carrying around because I still couldn't really walk, but you've got a blood bucket basically coming out, and your aim is to get as much blood out of your lung as possible because it's filled with blood. So, you know, you've got my wife coming, trying to go to the toilet, carrying your blood bucket with, like, it's grim. Like, and if anybody's had the displeasure of being to a major trauma ward before, it's like, I'll never forget that ward. It was horrific. There's guys in there with like half a head, and people come in, been stabbed or whatever. Like, it's, and you sometimes think, well, why am I in here? And you have to remind yourself that you've got 2 tubes coming out of your lungs. And I remember what I tried to do was take the lessons from Switzerland, because I was lucky to have a sort of mountain view in Switzerland. Sounds glamorous. And the first night I was in that ward, there was an Italian guy who got COVID. By the way, this is all in like COVID time, of course. He was diagnosed with COVID the night that I got there. So they wheeled him out. And as he was being wheeled out, I said, any chance you could move my bed to his spot? And his spot was by the window, but he was facing into the ward. It was like maybe 8 or 9 people in this ward, and they were facing me the same direction as he was. And I said, no, turn me around so I can face out the window and outside. So I got a view of some offices and like a chimney or something, but it was better than looking in the ward. And again, it was those tiny little bits that I would try and input to say, well, what can I do to raise my mood? And it's something like that. Or as I said, mini milestones.
I think that is such an, I mean, that for me in this whole story sums you up, Mike, and sums up what resilience is about. It's kind of, you know, it's the big story is you're on the road to recovery. But the really important story is that the milestones and the things that we use to get there, and the things
100%.
that we like, because it's every step, isn't it? It's every tiny little thing, whether it's moving the kneecap, whether it's
thing put together,
blowing the air, whether
my
it's
big
looking
learning
at the
from all
mountain.
this is the idea of the bigger picture, what I call the helicopter view. So much to my wife's dismay, I got a tattoo last year of the idea of the helicopter view, which in my head is, let's say there's a mountain range in front of you, and you're at the bottom of that mountain range. You're feeling stressed, or you're feeling upset about things. There's too much going on. You can't really see. You can't see over the mountains. Like, it's too much going on. And the idea of the helicopter being the vessel in which you move through life is that you can always jump in your helicopter, move up, and see the bigger picture, and you see the different peaks of that mountain range, which represent tasks or love or work or finances or whatever it is that's on.
And you can see the green plains beyond them, and
100%.
The river,
and you can fly towards that challenge. You can always then go down into the mountain range, deal with it, get back up again, and move forward. And
a wonderful analogy.
I use that every day. That's why I got it in my body. I was just like, this is what's got me through the experience I got through. Bit by bit by bit. And the classic old thing my dad used to say was, what's the best way to eat an elephant? Which is in small chunks, of course. Really rubbish, but it works.
Exactly, the first step on a big journey. So let's just we've probably got about 5 or 6 minutes.
Great.
The 30-minute set. So if we so about, must have been about, forgive my memory here, but just a couple of months ago, you did a wonderful Instagram video of you in a wheelchair moving across, which I thought was hilarious. But there was a reason you did this, and it was because you could then do another one a few months later, which you've done. And can you just run us through what was going on?
I can,
at that point.
So I had a second round of hip surgery in January 23, which didn't go well. Just to add to the journey on this, so I had another rod inserted, and my hip rotated outwards, took the plate with it, and then ended up cutting through my hip bone, which obviously wasn't the plan. It's then set in place, which is why I need to have another round. And I thought, I'm not going to be homebound for any longer than I need to be. I'm going to get myself a mobility scooter. so I did, and that first video you referenced to is me coming across from one side of the screen to the other with the They See Me Rolling song in the background, just to add a bit of humor to it. Then a couple of weeks ago, I posted a video with me coming into shot with the scooter, reversing, and then reappearing in shot with one crutch, which is where I currently am, just to sort of demonstrate that progress. And the song I chose was Walk of Life by Dire Straits, because that's how I feel. And then long term, the idea is to just walk across the screen. Like, that's, for me, that is success. That's the aim here. Maybe walk across carrying my boy, something like that. That's all I need. But that's the success story. I think it's quite symbolic. I need to choose a song. Maybe you can help me with that.
Perfect. You don't want me to go anywhere near song choice.
Good point.
But we may be able to play you out on it when it's if we can get the rights to it. So just to wrap up, Mike, some other big things have been. Well, firstly, where are you now? You see you're on one crutch, but how's the pain? How's the future looking? And anything else that's big and interesting happened in your life in the last 10 weeks?
Yeah, so I'm kind of off crutches at home, which is cool. So sort of hoppling around a bit. But if I go out, I'm on one. I went for my first swim at the weekend at the Olympic pool, which is my weirdly local pool, and they've turned it into the London Aquatic Centre. £7.45 for an hour in the Olympic pool, which I think is great value. So went to do that and promptly slept all afternoon after doing 20 minutes, but good milestone to hit. So my current sort of, I guess, runway is get as fit as my body will let me get before the next round of surgery, which I'm thinking will be maybe January, February next year, trying to enjoy Christmas as a family for the first time. And yeah, just that's kind of the focus. Obviously, I've had a son in the last 10 months, which is a big challenge. And when you can't really move and your wife is heavily pregnant, the thing that really struck me was the importance of your close network and your close friends and family. And you really see in those situations people that step up. They show you who they are. And for me, I'm just so thankful of the help and support that we've had during that time, because I don't think we could have got through it just us two or us three. Just not possible. I was still on two crutches when Jude was born, so that wasn't easy. But yeah, I just got to try and keep going, Tom, to be honest. And the aim long term is to get back to a OE session. Maybe I'll drive to Putney and see you guys, or see if I can get down to Docklands or something's my new local one now. But yeah, I mean, for me, it sounds corny because this is what we're talking about, but like, actually the end success for me has always been, and I think I said this to you at the time, is going back to do one element session. Like, that for me will symbolize that I'm back to where I was before the trip.
Yeah.
And we're maybe, I don't know, a year and a bit away from that, but I know I can do it.
It would lift me enormously, and everyone at Putney and anyone else who can make it down. But I mean, I think what I'm taking away, the big thing from this story, it's been what, 18 months so far. You've had a baby, you've had some huge, wonderful life achievements on the route, but I'm just loving that idea of small goals, and just whether it's moving your legs, blowing on the breathing apparatus that gives you a goal, and the joy that we can get out of those little milestones. And so, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on. I think your story is not just one of sort of physical resilience and mental resilience, but it's really uplifting as well to hear how you've coped with it and dealt with it, and actually being in contact with you throughout a period of time. It's given me a really good and strong respect for you, to be honest. So
thanks.
Thank you No, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with the members. And
Pleasure.
we'll wrap it up and get it out to everyone. And I'll try and get the rights to that song for the last one. Anyway, everyone, hopefully we'll have another one of these out soon. But thank you so much, anyone who's still listening.
Thanks.